with nothing but a great future apparently in front of them were afraid of their shadows. They were insecure. They were so inclined to the career track and afraid of getting into trouble that there were so many things that they wanted to talk about and wanted to be vocal about that they couldn't. And it was and if their politics was vaguely what would now be called progressive to the left at all, they just shut up about it. And so you got people who were doing very well on one level who were not living in a free society by consent. And they were in their 20s.
Mm.
And they weren't saying, except in coffee shops and in bars quietly to each other, what they really felt. They didn't say it in the office. They didn't say it on the street. And then I started saying it in print. All the stuff that they thought, but they thought was unthinkable.
Mm.
And I wasn't doing it to shock anybody. I was just reflecting what was going on at the time and what I heard from the people I hung out with, and expressions of my own thought as well, but doing it in terms of satiric humor, in terms of little stories with a beginning and a middle and an end. I mean, that, you know, later on, 3 or 4 or 5 years later, whenever it was, when I became aware of Second City in Chicago and improvisational comedy, I realized that, unbeknownst to me, they were experimenting on stage with exactly what I was doing on paper. Introducing a first line and doing it, you know, and kind of moving forward without anybody knowing clearly where they're going. And that's, you know, I improvised on paper. And what I was improvising was my characters getting into situations and how they would react. And readers reacted to that, you know, because I wasn't telling anybody what to think.
Right.
I was telling them what they thought. And I was having conversations that they had with each other in private. And I was expressing through my characters' doubts, their own insecurities. And once they saw it in print, what I got from everybody is, it's all so obvious. How come nobody else is doing it?
Right. Right.
And I was only doing it because it's what I saw around me, and what I felt, and also the urge to shoot my mouth off.
Huh.
So, and from there, as the times changed and we got into, we started moving toward Vietnam and then into Vietnam, the politics began to take over much more than they had before. And it became much more an expository, radical voice than it was in the beginning or that I ever intended it to be. It basically, Bob Scher, who used to be the editor of Ramparts and is still around doing Truth Day.
Of where?
What's that?
He was the editor of what?
Ramparts. You ever heard of Ramparts?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Ramparts was a big anti-war publication in the Vietnam years, and he and his staff were big fans of mine. But when we met and became friends, he says, "It's funny, your cartoons are much more radical than you are, because my politics, the politics expressed in the cartoons, often went beyond." I was personally much more cautious than my political voice on the paper.